Welcome back, everybody, to the Not a Rabbi podcast. It is the podcast where we get a deeper meaning of the traditions of Orthodox Judaism. I am your host, as always. I remain not a... There we go. All right, today actually is the 16th of June as I am recording this, 2024. And that makes today Father's Day. So any fathers out there, at any point in time that you are listening to this, have a happy Father's Day. It's very interesting personally because I try not to make too big of a deal of Father's Day. I keep things very low key. I don't ask for gifts, all of that jazz. We are not going out to, let's say, celebrate Father's Day for me. Once again, I like to keep things as a low key, so we just do things as it is. Have what I think is a nice show today for you guys, and before we get to what the show is about, I would like to once again start off with some gratitude, and I would like to thank the moderators of the unofficial Fifth Column podcast Discord server. I think I got that right. I can never get it straight. For letting me use their voice channel to do this recording live in front of a studio audience. It's always more funniest, I don't know, one of those to talk in front of a live audience while you're doing this recording. It makes things a lot nicer for me instead of just talking to a microphone. Some people like to talk just to a microphone itself. I am not one of those people. I feed off of the give and take of individuals and of the live chat, so definitely approve of that. Appreciate that. Also, like to thank Logan for the introduction music as always, and link for his Substack will be in the show notes as always. And also, last time I actually did not even speak about the Substack, but if you would like to subscribe to the Not a Rabbi podcast, get some additional content as well, potentially, by additional content, an occasional newsletter, or Muse-letter as we like to call it here, which I'll probably be getting back to once I finish my teaching responsibilities, which are finishing on Wednesday. And then I got to get all the grades in, which is always the fun part. But hopefully we'll get that out of the way relatively quickly. Definitely you should sign up for the Substack as well, notarabbi.substack.com. And you will get any and all content that I will put out. And you could always comment on any of those articles or podcasts that get posted over there, because that is what Substack is for, to publish your information and to get some feedback from the people that listen to it or read it. And that's, again, one of the things that I love is having the conversation continue. So now let's get back to what I was talking about with today's episode. What is today's episode about? Great question. Today's episode is going to be, I think, more of a follow-up type of podcast where there were a couple of questions where I'd like to follow up on. And then there are some really interesting news articles that we have here. One about last week's article or topic, or 2 weeks ago's topic of the podcast about conversion and how there is more conversion happening since October 7th. We have something talking about one of my favorite topics, which is biblical archaeology. We have talking about machine learning and the status of some Talmudic tracts. And then we have the interesting case of a rookie's first name and how that first name may cause problems for the fans of the Indianapolis Colts if they happen to be Orthodox Jews. So with that, let's get in any introductory questions from the studio audience to begin with. All right. So, as you watch me have a drinking problem and spill all over myself. Never a dull moment. All right. So let's go to the follow-up stuff first here. And I alluded to this last episode where I was trying to address a question and and I don't think I did the job correctly. I actually spoke to the individual and they said, no, you totally did not do the job correctly. And you didn't answer the question. So I'm going to take another shot at answering the question because this is really what the individual was asking me. The scenario is as follows. If I were at your place on Friday night and when you kicked me out, or it was time for me to leave, would it be a real faux pas to pull out my phone to call a cab? Or should I wait till I'm outside, out of your eruv, etc.? And does weather affect that? So let's address that point, right? Let's address that point. Now, I'm going to assume, based on the second part of his question, and actually we'll just get to that so there's full understanding here. Would it be a faux pas, if that's the way you would pronounce it? I'm not sure. Faux pas? Maybe faux pas. Because I am sort of Jewish. So let's take the first part, and with the assumption, based on the second part of the question, we're going to assume that in the first part of the question, the individual is not Jewish. And if the individual is not Jewish and, it is time for them to leave, whether I kick them out or not, or they just decide to leave because I'm acting really uncomfortably, like taking my shoes off and doing a little RMS situation there on my feet, you can, you would, if the individual were not Jewish, waiting, you could certainly call a cab. At least I would say you could call a cab from my house. It's not an issue necessarily there. If the weather were bad, you should certainly do that. I would never kick out somebody into the cold so that they can go ahead and, sit out in the cold and wait for, let's say, an Uber or anything like that. So if it's a nice night, maybe not. It's not a bad idea to do. Like I think I had mentioned beforehand, I have had situations where I've had non-Jews attending a Shabbos meal, and they've actually had emergency phone calls happen from a client of theirs. This individual is in the mental health profession, so and they had to take the call, and so take the call they did, which is obviously not an issue for them to do so in that aspect. I think I just fixed a little bit of a mic problem. I probably am sounding a lot louder now. Anyhow, so they actually probably went onto my porch to take the call. Again, that may have been an issue of it being more of a private call that they needed to take. And then there needed to be some discretion and some privacy there. But I don't think in this instance here that the individual not being Jewish, it would make a difference. I personally don't think so. I can remember a time ages ago, much, much younger, where I had, actually my family had somebody who was not Jewish come over, and, they drive there, and, that's what they do. We're not gonna stop that. Now, the second part of the question is more of an interesting part of the question, I would think, where is it worse because the individual is sort of Jewish? Well, again, I'm going to, I'll be a stickler for details here. If you have a matrilineal descent where your mother, her mother, so on and so forth, were Jewish, then you're considered Jewish. Now, are you religious? No, you're not religious, but you are considered Jewish. So let's, the sort of Jewish is kind of the, in my eyes, and we'll just, preface it with that, is the sort of pregnant. You are or you aren't. Either you're Jewish or you're not. Now, how religious you are, what you observe, that's a different issue, and that is a topic for a different conversation. But the fact is, you're Jewish or not. Okay, so that's part A of that. Part B of this would be something that is really debated up until today regarding people who have non-affiliated, non-religious Jews who are interested in learning more about their Jewish identity and coming into it and potentially becoming more religious as well. And this is an argument that people have, that the what we call in Hebrew the poskim, or the halachic decisors of our day, have had with regard to having non-religious people come over, and are they allowed to drive there? What about after the meal? What happens after the meal? And so on and so forth. And you'll be, once again, you'll probably be totally shocked to hear that it is a split decision. There is no overwhelming way things are done. People of the Chabad community, the Lubavitch community, have one way of doing things. I would say that most people, and I'll have, to the best of my knowledge, most people will try to put the people in a location for Shabbos where they don't have to drive or do anything, but if not, then that's okay. If I'm not mistaken, Chabad, the Lubavitch Hasidic sect, if you will, I believe is okay, even straight out not having people, stay over or offered to be stay over. And the concept is, if I'm not mistaken, again, if I am wrong, please somebody correct me on this. I'm happy to be corrected because I like learning. And if I'm wrong, I like to make sure that I, learn something from it. But if I understand it correctly, the concept is, as these individuals are how to put it, for a little bit of time, however much time it is that you're having them at the Shabbos meal with them, they are observing Shabbos. So therefore, it is good for them, and it's not a problem. And then once they're finished, okay, listen, they're not ready to observe a full Shabbos yet, so they're not going to observe a full Shabbos yet. So that's the understanding of it. I mean, it's a fascinating. Like I said, there are two. In addition to the Chabad halachic decisors and the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who really led this, and I think this would be his point of view, which I just mentioned. There are two other people of note that I'd like to mention here, which are of the halachic decisors, the poskim, as we call them in Hebrew. One of them is Rabbi Moshe Sternbach, and he is the head of, for lack of a better term, I don't like these terms, but he is like the head of the ultra-religious, or ultra-orthodox, I should say, sect in Israel. Not the Neturei Karta; those people are a different breed altogether, and we're not going to get into them. But he is it's they call the Eidei Charedus, and they are the ultra orthodox. They're very religious. They're the old settlers of Israel. A lot of them are the old settlers of Israel whose parents or great grandparents came in the early, in the 1800s most likely. And anyway, he was somebody that actually was the chief rabbi of South Africa, and he dealt in South Africa. There is a huge community of people who have become more religious or more observant in their observance, or more religious in their observance, something like that. And so he's been very sensitive to these needs, and he is a lot more on the he's a lot less stringent and a lot less strict in terms of these laws. What's fascinating is, on the other hand of things here, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who I believe I've discussed previously, who was the main halachic decider in America for a very long time, since probably the 1940s, if not before that. And he is actually a lot more strict in terms of the observance and what people should do and how people should deal with this. So, again, fascinating discussion here in terms of what really should go on. And, as I always say, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and you have somebody upon whom to rely should you do that. So that is that. Hopefully that makes some sense. Any questions from the crowd over here? Nothing from the crowd. Okay. So we're going to go on to the second piece of feedback. And we were talking 2 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, 2 episodes ago. We were talking about the topic of European Jews not having or being afraid to put a mezuzah out. And somebody had asked me, can you put it on the inside of the door? Which I understood, and I still think my understanding is correct, but I understood as on the other side of the door. So you have the outside of the door, which is where the mezuzah generally is, and then you have the inside of the door. And he asked if you could put it on the inside of the door. Now, what's interesting is last week I was, I do a study program of Talmud, where we go through a page of Talmud daily. When I say a page, I'm talking about one side and the second side, so it's a full page. And we go through that daily. And one of the discussions that they had, and I will bring up the link to it, I hope. Can I bring up the link to it? Let's see, right mouse click. No, I just clicked on it and I'm going to go there. Okay, so I'm going to pop this into the show notes so you guys can see that here. And basically it asks, whose obligation is it to put the mezuzah onto the door? So the Gemara, the Talmud asks, this is a Talmudic discussion in Bava Metzia, which is more of a Aramaic term, which means the middle gate, and page 101b, second side of page 101, and basically, they ask because is it something? And again, I'm not going to, it's dealing here with what the obligations are for a landlord and for a tenant. And so they ask about the mezuzah, and the original, the first thought that the Talmud has here is that we put a slit into the stone doorpost and put the mezuzah into that slit. So, in a way, it's inside the door, it's on the inside as well. And I found that very fascinating, and I like that idea. Now, it happens to be that the Talmud changes course and says, no, that can't be, because really you could put the mezuzah in anything. Remember, the mezuzah itself is the piece of parchment with the writing on it of a couple of paragraphs from the Torah. And you could put that, you could cover that in any way that you want and affix it onto the doorpost, which is how we do it, because most of the things that you see outside what we call a mezuzah are technically the mezuzah cover, and what would be inside of that cover is the mezuzah itself. Again, I thought it was an interesting little tidbit which I wanted to bring up. Any questions about that? Any questions? Okay. We're going to go on. So let's continue doing some follow-up-ish type of stuff. And what we're going to do here is have an article. All these articles will be in the show notes. Good question here. Do people ever affix a mezuzah, like a sticker, on a hotel room or Airbnb when traveling? The answer to that is most likely not. And when I say, because the obligation to have the mezuzah up is only when you have you're living there full time. Generally, with a hotel room or an Airbnb, you're there for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks at most, but you have like a 30-day window that you don't necessarily need to go ahead and have a mezuzah up in those 30 days. And specifically, since in either of those places, a Airbnb or a hotel room, you are not living there. You're there for a short period of time. Then you do not have to go ahead and put a mezuzah there. It's only for some place where you are, dwelling full time, and in this instance, full time means more than 30 days or more. So hopefully that answers the question. So a dorm room, I would say a dorm room, you would be required to. That would be my guess. Any doorways within a dorm room as well, because really you're making that dorm room your lodging. That's where you are living, theoretically, unless you're just going to be passed out on the, on the quad, on the ground of the quad or something like that. Even, let's say if you were to, be in a fraternity, you would have a mezuzah. You would have to have a mezuzah at the very least on the room that you are living in or sleeping in, if not the entire fraternity, I would guess. This is stuff that's just off the top of my head, but it has to quote Dan Rather, it has a ring of truthiness to it. So I'm gonna go with that. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on then. Now here's the article that I wanted to post or wanted to mention here, where it talks about, and actually I didn't. Darn it. Okay. I forgot that this is a paywalled site, and I am running up against the paywall after 3 lines. So I am just going to have to go ahead and read the summation paragraph of this. U.S. rabbis say they have never seen anything like it. A blessing on your head. One of the people in the live chat has just posted a link to it, which I will. Did I not? No, I am a total stupid idiot. Okay, let's try that for a third time. Somebody has posted a link that is not paywalled. I will post that non-paywalled link to into the show notes as opposed to what I have. Okay, so this is an individual that converted. Now these are going to be, it seems like, and again, I just walking through it here, it seems like that these are mostly mostly either reform or conservative conversions. Yep, and there is Rabbi Adam Mintz here, who is quoted. Actually, Rabbi Mintz, I've listened to several of his history lectures, which were very, very fascinating. But he has something called Project Ruth, which is a privately run Orthodox conversion program. Now, if you remember, one of the things that I spoke about last episode was the fact that they have kind of a template that the people that convert really are, or the converting courts, I should say, are really focusing on going ahead and using to make sure that they are accepted everywhere. An organization such as Project Ruth, albeit I think that it is a nice thing, may run into some issues where it comes to, let's say, if this individual were going to go ahead and want to move to Israel, and for better or worse, and my opinion is mostly for worse, they really go to extremes there to make sure that the conversion is a quote-unquote good conversion, and the like. And this is actually, it's very funny. I'll tell a quick aside story that somebody told me recently. People who are listening may or may not be aware that former President Trump's daughter, Ivanka, actually, when she married to Jared, of course I'm blanking on his last name, but when he married Kushner, thank you. When she married Jared Kushner, she actually went ahead and had an Orthodox conversion, and there are people, even to this day, who complain about whether or not her conversion was truly valid or not. Now, a very large rabbi was asked this question someplace, and he basically said, "We don't." He intimated. I'll put it this way. I don't, because I forget the exact language that was used, but he basically said something along the lines of, "We don't speak bad about this conversion. It's a good conversion." Totally straight out. Now the question is going to be, and again, this is just, a complete hypothetical. If the Kushner family, Jared and Ivanka, although she has a Hebrew name of Yael, which I actually like better than Ivanka, but hey, if they would move to Israel, decide to, move to Israel and become Israeli citizens, would she be accepted? I think probably because of political issues, political pressure, they would accept it, but it'd be an interesting case study. There have been multiple case studies where an individual is not adhering religiously as they would like, and they've actually said that the person is not considered religious. So it's a very touchy situation. It's a very touchy feeling, or not touchy feeling, but it's a touch and go situation. And I think that, in my not so humble opinion, the chief rabbinate in Israel does themselves a disservice by this. But again, that is my own personal opinion. Accepted as a Jewish religion member and not ethnicity, or can a spouse's ethnicity have a bearing? No, this is specifically as a full-fledged member of the Jews, with keys to the space laser and the like, or the weather controlling machine. We generally give a choice. So, okay, back to the article here. Rabbi Mintz then says, October 7th made a lot more people feel that they couldn't be in the middle anymore, that they had to take a stand, and many people have had an extreme reaction to what happened on that day. And again, I'm not going to get into the politics of it. We all know where I stand with it. So I'm just going to, leave it at that. And again, there are going to be, So I think we'll just leave it at that. It's an interesting article. It's definitely an interesting article. Sounds like the director Norman Jewison, who was not Jewish but felt a strong kinship. Yeah, could be. Well, that's an director of Fiddler on the Roof. Oh, okay. Because I was wondering who that was, and I was not a big fan of Fiddler on the Roof. I was forced to watch it as a young child, so that probably explains it. Okay, so commenter posts from the article. Tom has always felt a strong yet inexplicable connection to the Jewish people, hoping you might discover he had some Jewish ancestry. He took several DNA tests that turned up nothing, much to his disappointment. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. Just because, DNA is not the be-all and end-all for becoming religious or for becoming Jewish. I would say. It, like I had mentioned before, or like I mentioned in the last episode, the primary thing with this is that you need to accept the commandments, all of them, whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them. You have to follow them, right? You can't just say, well, you know what, I like to be Jewish, but I got to have my shrimp, which is something that former Mayor Ed Koch used to say on his radio show on WABC. Or you cannot just convert for the jokes like Tim Watley. Exactly. So, that is this article. You can feel free to peruse the article, which I will provide a link to, thanks to the listener and the live chat as well. All right, let's go on to another question here, or not another question, but let's go on to some whatchamacallit. Where are we at for time? 32 minutes, 48 seconds. All right, wow, this is going well. All right, new article here, and I'll post this to the chat. Unveiling Jerusalem's priestly neighborhood from the Herodian era. History is being revealed in the Jewish quarter as ancient homes of temple priests reopen after a major renovation. Herod was a head of Israel at the point in time of the Second Temple. He was set up by the if I'm not mistaken, by the Romans as the head. And again, my love of biblical archaeology is here, and this is actually really interesting. The strict observance of purity laws characteristic of priestly homes can be inferred from the number of ritual baths discovered. The large homes, some up to 800 square meters or 8,600 square feet. Dang, that is pretty big. Adorned with ornate decoration and intrinsic mosaics, reflect the opulence of its inhabitants. This is also true that a lot of them were very rich. Some of them became high priests because they actually gave enough money, which is really not how it's supposed to go. But that's how it went at that time, and and they generally resigned their position before Yom Kippur, because on Yom Kippur, one of the things that happen is that the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, goes in. He's the only one that's allowed to go in at this specific, at all, and this one time a year, go into what is called the Holy of Holies, or as we like to call it, if you're a Doctor Strange fan, the Sanctum Sanctorum. And that is where God's presence really, really rests. I would say it's the, to explain it a little bit better, it's where the highest concentration of God is. But I wanted to get back to this about the strict observance of purity laws, because the priests, in order to serve in the temple, they needed to be pure. A lot of times they were given tithes and other things, and in order to eat them, they had to remain pure as well. They could not have be around a dead person. They could not be touch a creepy crawly type of thing, let's say like a spider or a scorpion, or your run of the mill any type of bug that you find in homes. So they had that was a purity, and was definitely something that was very, very serious to them. And so it's again, very interesting article. I always like to share some of the cool biblical archaeologic articles that I come across, mostly because I can, really. All right, there's going to be a question being popped in here. Was it concerned that these priests were personally not pure and that they would attract the wrath of God? Not in the and the individual posts a scene from the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not in that sense, because the Bible, the Torah says that the priests have to serve in purity, that they have to be pure to serve, and so as a result, they need to make sure that they are very strict on the laws of purity. That would be what I would say. I don't know, and if they didn't serve, then there are issues, or not didn't serve, but if they weren't pure and they did serve, then there can be some issues with that regard. And I still think that the I was joking around on Passover. Actually, I was talking to somebody, one of the rabbis that was the head of the Passover program there, and I forgot how it came up, but I said I talked about how I saw this documentary once, and the ark is actually in the in some nondescript warehouse in Washington D.C. and I had him going for a couple of minutes. It was pretty funny. And then he says, "You are very weird," and I said, "Yeah, that's true." Now, I mean, maybe really, if we want to, go Ghostbuster style and cross the streams, maybe the Ark is actually in Warehouse 13. Okay, and maybe I'm going to have to post something about Warehouse 13. Let me just put a note in here to do that. I think I spelled warehouse incorrectly. Yes, it was. It was managed by a Jewish man. Okay, so let's move on to what we're running up against 40 minutes here. Should I keep going, or should we end? It's up to me. I don't want to have to make the decisions, man. Okay. I am going to skip the article about... I'm going to skip the article about machine learning and Talmudic tracts. Maybe I'll throw that into a newsletter. But There is a. This is the one I really enjoy because this is just classic. Okay, there is an NFL rookie who was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, and he has a very interesting first name, which I shan't mention, and because it potentially can be the name of God. And we do not use the name of God in vain for any other reasoning but for blessings and in prayers. He does have a nickname, thankfully, which is AD, which is great, kind of ironic. Maybe he should be called BCE instead. But we have, and it goes, the article here goes through where we have had multiple people with biblical first names, such as in pro football, such as Ezekiel Elliott, Nahshon Wright, Adam, probably, several others, and this is so he reached out to the writer of this, Noah. Yes, Noah. Which, of course, reminds me of whenever I hear the word Noah, and I say it out loud, actually, also, I always think of the old Bill Cosby Noah skit, which is still, to this day, probably hilarious, in spite of the horrible things that Bill Cosby wound up doing in his older life. Anyway, so this the writer of this article reached out to Rabbi Avi Schwartz, who is an NFL fan who works in Rutgers University Hillel, for some guidance. It turns out that this Rabbi Schwartz had already consulted his own rabbi, Rabbi Aryeh Leibowitz, who is a leader at Yeshiva University Seminary. He is actually the director of rabbinic ordination program, the smicha, what we call the smicha program. So he's very high up. He is actually, I listen to this is where I actually listen to Rabbi Leibowitz often. I listen to him a whole lot, and sorry, I'm still getting over something. And he's a tremendous scholar. He is a tremendous, as we like to say in Hebrew, he is a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He is somebody that knows and is very well versed and learned in lots of different things. And Rabbi Leibowitz, he's also the author of at least 3 books, and a 4th one is coming out, if I'm not mistaken, on Jewish law. So Rabbi Leibowitz asked his rabbi, who is Yeshiva University's Rabbi Herschel Schachter, and he asked about a similar topic, someone who worked with a doctor whose name sounded like the Hebrew word for God. And Rabbi Schachter, again, Rabbi Schachter is somebody that I've listened to his lectures as well, and it is he is a tremendous scholar and Talmud Chacham as well. And Rabbi Schachter thought it was fine. The rationale was that it's obviously you're not calling a wide receiver your God. And regardless, you should still apparently, yes. The question is, of course, if he is really, really, really good, and they start calling him GOAT, is it going to be then God of all time? With the G being God? I don't know. We're going to have to find out. But the golden goat. Yes. For those of you who do not understand, that we're referencing the golden calf that the Israelites unfortunately decided to worship, and that's in the story in the book of Exodus, and why they did that and how they did that is outside of the purview of today's podcast for sure. Okay, so I think that's what we're going to do is we're going to call it a day today, and unless there's any other questions in the chat. All right, no other questions in the chat. With that, once again, I would like to thank the moderators of the unofficial Fifth Column Discord server for allowing me this time and this space, as always. Like I said before, I love to go ahead and do this live. It makes it so much more enjoyable for myself. I would also like to thank Logan for the theme music, and I would like to thank you for listening and potentially subscribing at notarabbi.substack.com, where you can find this podcast. The podcast you can find all over the place, any place that a podcast is found. But if you do listen to it someplace other than on the Substack, do me a favor, would you? And leave a comment on about my review about the podcast, if you would. I'm up on YouTube as well. You could leave some comments. Smash that like button, as the YouTube creators like to say. I definitely appreciate that, because that is always good for the revenue. Whatever revenue that is. I don't think I'm up to that stage yet of getting revenue. But hey, let's try to get the ball rolling with that. And thank you very much all for listening. I am Aaron Benedict, and I am not a rabbi.